tell these folks a little bit about your background. You know, you were this big.
I was born in
exactly. Just a little context as to how you got to where you are,
okay.
and we'll sort of dig in from there.
Okay, and the folks that have heard this before, I'm sorry if I'm going to bore you with a little bit of my life story.
Actually, can we turn this?
Okay, that's great. And I wanted to say a successful meeting is one where you actually get up and go get more food and go back. Or I'm going to enjoy it. Don't think you're distracting. Please do that. So some of the things to know about me is I was born in Chicago. I was raised in Chicago, just outside of Chicago, in Evanston, actually. And I grew up in an Irish Catholic Democratic family. And my parents were very active publicly. Thank you. My mother is a public housing advocate. My parents coordinated congressional campaigns. I was a precinct captain by age 12. I've knocked on a lot of doors, and if you know anything about Chicago politics, you are part of a machine, and you know you better get all your votes out on election day. So I think that's really where I learned how to set goals and fight for what matters to me, and actually get people elected, that you actually can get people elected who actually matter to you. When I moved out to the West Coast, and I went to the Evergreen State College, I was very much an activist, and I went to the Evergreen State College. I actually told my parents that the Evergreen State College was just a state school, very normal and regular. Actually is a radical hotbed, but they didn't know that. And I studied organizational development. So my training and background is in how do you run organizations effectively? How do you start them? How do you bring in the right talent? How do you hire people that are smarter than yourself? How can you run a mission-driven organization and still a profitable organization? How do you create a workplace culture that really can drive an organization forward? By age 24, I had 2 little kids, and I had a young family, and we all packed up and moved to Portland. And I'm bringing my activist orientation, and I want to come to this beautiful city, and I want to do something meaningful. And I took a job at Nature's Fresh Northwest for $5 an hour. And this is where I asked, how many people remember Nature's? Oh, yeah. And this is where we carbon date the audience. It's a trick. There you go. One on division. You remember back. Okay, all right. You're not that old then. So we have, I actually started buying used equipment for Nature's when we had very little money, and working in the produce department, and I worked my way up to the executive team, and we grew that small company into a large company. And as I was telling the folks downstairs earlier, my mother thought I was part of a cult because it was this organic thing. In the mid-'80s, it was a little bit weird. She said, I don't know. And I said, no, there's beauty, there's genius in this idea. It's going to grow into something significant. And what a lot of people don't know about me is I actually spent many years in high tech in Portland. I got really excited about this idea of multimedia. And multimedia was this new concept, and you could put it on this thing called a CD-ROM, and it went in a computer and played on the World Wide Web. It was outrageous. And
now we're carbon dating you.
Yes, exactly. So I started out with graphic media. The company was, I was the operations director, managed a software development team, went through 6 mergers and acquisitions in 5 years, made some people a lot of money, made our little family enough money to help start New Seasons Market in 1999. So my husband and I and 2 other families and 50 of our friends from Nature's started New Seasons Market. And anybody who remembers 1999, it was the time of Webvan and homegrocer.com. And everyone was going to buy their groceries online. You weren't going to walk into a grocery store again. So we basically risked our life savings on this bricks and mortar idea, and it paid off. And I'm very proud that we now have 12 stores and over 2,000 employees. And my husband and I now are just small owners in the company, which gives us an arm's length relationship with the company and allows me to run for public office. I'm not sure how much you want to talk about.
No,
that's more.
Good. I mean, I think what you've basically done is you've labeled yourself as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Yes. And as such, you have a good affinity for what these guys are dealing with. And you know, one of the things that Eileen's been doing has been talking to a lot of folks in the community who are, like yourselves, owners and founders and CEOs of small, early-stage, high-tech companies. And I'm just curious, as an entrepreneur, talking with our new entrepreneurs, there's got to be a big difference between this world we live in and some of the other world in Portland. And maybe you can talk a little bit about what you've learned and what this city dilemma is in terms of where the opportunity is or where the challenge is.
Okay, so this is true. I come from a very entrepreneurial background. I've been involved in several successful organizations, for-profit and non-profit organizations. And I'll say that the reason I get into this race, we'll lead in it that way, is because I'm desperately fearful and concerned about the economy in Portland. It is a great place to live. It is a tough place for most people to find a job and make a living. And I want to be able to say, you know what? We can have both a progressive city and a vibrant economy. We have a myth here that says you can't have both. You can't have a progressive city and a vibrant economy. And we've got to be able to break through that myth, commit to growing jobs, commit to growing the economy. And the entrepreneur in me says, we can do that. And the entrepreneurism is probably a lot of the key to the future and the key to where the success of this city is going to come from. So we're going to have, I believe that we can be the best city in the country to open a small business and to be an entrepreneur and to grow your business here. 95% of the businesses in Portland have 50 or fewer employees. This is an economic ecosystem of small businesses. And we need to harness that resource and be able to create in this extraordinary entrepreneurial environment.
And of course, one of the things that I think you've been most surprised about in the conversations is just how much money has already been attracted to this city. And this, you know, out in the world we all live in, right? We're hiring, we're raising money, we're doing all those great things that is sort of giving us this new buzz. So, given that, what kinds of things has it made you think about?
So here's what's interesting. I kind of think of it's like this bizarro world. You know that little cartoon? That's like there's one world that looks like this, where people are really unhappy and can't find a job, and then there's this whole other world that there's people they can't hire enough people. There's more openings than anybody can fill, and these two worlds are not talking to each other. And the fact that this world the world that many of you operate in have been involved in $150 million in the last 12 months have been invested in the small entrepreneurial community. It's extraordinary. That's a story that's the beginning and the seeds of the next chapter in Portland and Oregon's future, I think. So and actually I was telling the folks downstairs earlier is I've been doing a series of meetings, one-on-one meetings and group meetings with entrepreneurs, primarily in the tech industry, and I would say that they're kind of cowboys. And I said there's a lot of testosterone in the room when you get them together. That there is this extraordinary.
They're more crazy.
I love the crazy ones.
You
I
are.
love entrepreneurs. And there's more ideas than you can possibly imagine. And we have to be able, and what I've been asking these folks is, what's the obstacle to growth? How can we really push the boundaries here and become an extraordinary place to do business and to create jobs?
What are some of the things that as a result of what you've heard, what are some of the things that you're thinking about would help the community?
Yeah. So first of all, I think we should ask these guys too.
Yeah, we will.
Okay, we'll ask them. Okay. So because we're still building this conversation.
But you've learned a lot over the last. I've been there with you. You've been learning. You've been listening. You've been asking.
Yeah.
Right. I know you got opinions.
Okay. She's doing pretty good. Yeah.
You got opinions, Eileen. I know.
Not as many as
We're getting to the click and clack part.
Right. So I think there's any number of things that we can do to really unleash this part of the community. One of them simply has to do with it should be easy to interact with City Hall, with the government in Portland. Right now, if you want to start a business, I've helped open grocery stores for 25 years in Portland. And these are progressive, sustainable, grocery stores. They should be the love child of the city, if you will. Every time we open a grocery store, there's 200 neighborhood jobs and with healthcare, good jobs with healthcare. And it's very difficult to open a business here and to grow a business here. So we should be able to make it easier in many ways. One of which, from a very simple perspective, is that we have to streamline the permitting process here. We have to consolidate the permitting process and make it service-oriented. You have to go from a culture inside City Hall that says, I am going to show you all the regulations, this whole obstacle course, and I'm going to stand by and watch you trip through it, to I'm in service to you, I want to help you open your business, how can I get you through it more quickly? Somebody's got their hand up.
Yeah, question.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic. But one of the things I've heard, and again, I'm not an expert on politics, is the mayor position in Portland is fairly weak. Do you have the power to make that happen by fiat, or do you have to go corral people in a process, then create momentum to get these changes fulfilled?
Great question. You have to be able to, they call it a weak mayor system, right? But you have to be able to, and let's talk about this permitting system. Right now, the permitting system is spread out through all these bureaus. And you have to be able to get enough consensus. You have to get 3 votes. You have to be able to count to 3 out of a group of 5 to get the permitting process consolidated. I will then take the bureau, which is the Bureau of Development Services. I'm going to walk my talk and take all of the bureaus that are related to economic development. And then I can work with that group in shifting that culture once it's all consolidated in a single bureau. But let me just say some other things. So one of the things we've learned from the tech community, from some other obstacles, are, wouldn't it be, and we talked about this earlier, wouldn't it be nice if a startup could walk into a facility where the fiber optics were built in, the data structure was set up, where you didn't have to have a commit to a 5 or a 10-year lease as you're starting? Can we begin to create some structures that allow startups to more easily move in and put down roots? So I think there's a number of interesting things that we can do. I'll just say that one of the obstacles that we've been hearing in these conversations is that people are having a hard time recruiting into the organizations. How many of you are actually hiring now? How many people are involved in an organization that's actually hiring? How difficult is it to hire? Now, give me a couple stories.
.NET programmers.
Sorry?
Yeah, no,
.NET programmers. Very difficult to hire.
I was going to say, I mean, your question earlier, one of the hurdles, I mean, one of the things that can be done is which is more medium to long term, is just high class higher education, right? Top class higher education. That's the biggest problem that I'm facing is getting, well qualified college graduates internally.
Perfect. Okay, other obstacles or recruitment?
I think one of so I'm with Azure Technologies, just a startup company in South Portland. So one of the things we had problem with hiring top-notch executives. I mean, having the culture and mindset to run a business with an open mind. I think that was the real shortcomings what I saw here in Portland. And in terms of local engineering talent, there are super fleets of engineers all around, especially because of critical mass created by Intel and all other small communities, especially in software. There is ample talent there. But having the influx and consolidating and channeling it right way, you need super executive talent. And what he's pointing out is like having people coming from Harvard. How many people came here from top-notch universities to the executive coordinator? That's the question I keep asking to SOA, the software organization. That's still lacking. And
So,
I think the maturity to run businesses is limited, especially for startups.
Very interesting. So we've been hearing some of these same thoughts. This is actually, you should know that Natalie over here is taking notes on what you're saying. So you will not be quoted in the paper, but your thoughts are going into our little think tank. And one of the things that we've been hearing is that in a recruitment process, let's start with the education piece. The Portland really, there's no reason that we shouldn't be educating more high-tech professionals. And starting at our high school level, we should be able to be creating pre-technical folks who are really committed to and can see job opportunities coming open. In fact, I was talking to some school district folks who I was telling your story to them. And they said, "Oh, we don't believe you." Literally. And I said, I want to introduce you. I want to be able to put you guys in front of some of these school folks. So one thing the mayor can do is convene some of these conversations and say, listen to these guys. These guys have job openings. We need to build a structure so that your students are prepared for these types of openings. Or in our bio-life sciences, OHSU has got this extraordinary world-class bio-life sciences program. We should have a high school program that's feeding right into that. So I think there's a number of things from an education perspective. You know, a mayor can have a bully pulpit to be out talking about. But the other thing is that we've been hearing is that if you want to recruit, for instance, a C-level person, that CTO or to this region, one of the risks for them in moving their family here is if that job doesn't work out with you, is there enough of an ecosystem? Is there another opportunity for them?
That is true.
Right.
I mean,
There's a lot of nods here. If this critical mass doesn't quite exist yet, so that you can say, this is a tech center. This should be the center of excellence, a center of excellence around technology, software development, startups in general. And what we have to be able to do is put this city on the map from that perspective, much the way we've done it for sustainability. This should be, there's no reason that Portland shouldn't be known as an innovative laboratory, great place to start and work your way up and to make your fortune. And I think it can be. I've been building stories and brands for a really long time. And I was telling the folks downstairs that I've spent years telling stories where you pick a product, whether it's a wild salmon or it's an apple from Walla Walla, Washington, and to be able to say,